Hello, and welcome to the online Data Quality Control Day preparation presentation. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support, and with me today is Helen Jones, Academic Program Manager in the Division of Assessment and Accountability. To prepare for Quality Control Day, we'll do an overview. We'll talk about the accountability cut scores, the reporting timeline, share some preliminary data cautions and embargo status, and then I'll turn it over to Helen at that time for quality control spreadsheets and a review of those. And then finally end with some materials and processes for Quality Control Day. The Office of Assessment and Accountability is excited that the Quality Control Day will occur on Tuesday, October 17th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, the purpose of Quality Control Day is to review school and district data prior to public release to find any systematic issues. District assessment coordinators will have the first look at their accountability data for their school and their district. Now, they won't get to see any other school or districts on Quality Control Day, nor will they see state information. But district assessment coordinators will review their school and their individual district data for big issues that could impact multiple schools. Now, it's not the time to make individual student changes. That happened during fall data review, and then it'll happen also again after public release. Once we have the public release, then that's another opportunity for schools and districts to make individual student changes. Now, again, the purpose of Quality Control Day is to get toward more accurate public reporting, to identify those big issues that potentially could impact multiple schools or districts. An example from a previous Quality Control Day was an error was found in the programming that excluded all students that participate in the alternate assessment program. So the data that was reviewed during Quality Control Day did not have any of the student scores or information and data from the students that participated in the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment. So that was a systematic issue that obviously impacted many schools and districts across the state. Those are the big type of systemic issues that we're looking for. Now, to review the data, the district assessment coordinators, building assessment coordinators had the opportunity to review individual student data during the fall data review. That is a step in the quality control process prior to public release. So this Quality Control Day is another step toward getting toward more accurate public reporting. The focus of Quality Control Day is on that accountability data. This will be the first time that district assessment coordinators will get to see their color ratings, their indicator data. We've talked about in the previous trainings about the levels and ratings and colors and all of those federal classifications. Quality Control Day will be the first time that DACs will be able to see that preliminary data. They'll conduct a review of data to, again, get toward that more accurate public reporting. And during the Quality Control Day, we'll want to take particular and pay particular attention to individual student groups that have that federal classification of targeted support and improvement. Now, we've released indicator trainings and an overview training. So we really hope that you've watched that and have a better understanding of the new accountability system. This is the first time that we have included change in the accountability system. As we've mentioned previously, these changes came about from Senate Bill 158 during the 2020 legislative session. And that piece of legislation had indicators that was part of an exclusive list. And each of these state indicators are to be measured on status and change. Because of the pandemic and the impact that COVID-19 had on testing, the 22-23 school year is the first time that we've been able to fully implement the new system because we needed 2 years of status to determine the change between the indicators. Now, each of those indicators are on different scales. As we noted in the previous trainings, those indicator scores are limited in the ranges, and those ranges are demonstrated here on the slide, and they're different ranges. The status scores for reading and math is different from progress on English language proficiency or even quality of school climate and safety. So we've put some limits in place to safeguard our schools from falling too far below or above the scales. If for some reason an indicator score is less than 0, the change score will be adjusted so that the school doesn't fall below 0. And similarly at the top range is also limited to the top score of the scale. And this ensures that the scales and the scores remain meaningful and comparable across indicators as well as across schools. Now, as a reminder, the indicator score is found by adding the current year status score plus the change score. And remember, the change score is the difference between the current year status and the prior year status. So as we apply these limits to change, let's look at a scenario that could possibly happen, although not very often. There are schools that are at the top of the range in the state assessment results in reading and math. In this example, if the current status of the school is 120 and their prior year status was 110, the difference would be 110. So the change score would be 10. Because there is a limit to the top of the range of the scale, the change that will be applied would be 5 because the score of the top of the scale is 125. So adding the 10, the change difference, the raw difference to 120 would take this school in this example above the 125. So the change applied will actually be 5 when it's calculated to determine the overall score. The raw change difference, which is 10, will be used when determining the indicator rating in that 5x5 color table. The change applied will be used to determine the overall score. Now, these change differences and change applied will be noted in the spreadsheets. Let's look now at the accountability cut scores. The status cut scores for elementary, middle, and high schools remain the same as they were in the reporting of the accountability for fall of 2022. So you'll recognize these elementary and middle school and high school status cut scores. The new element is change. The change, as we've noted, is decline significantly through increase significantly. And you'll notice here on this elementary school example that change is both negative as well as positive, as we would all like to think that all change would be a positive performance in our students' outcome. Sometimes there is some regression and schools do decline. I'll note here for you that the standard setting panelist took a very thoughtful approach when they determined the change scores. You'll notice that the cut between maintained and increased is that 0, it's set at 0, so that any increment of positive change will be on the increased side. Now, also notice that maintained is a range as well, so that you can decline slightly and still be in that maintained status. As we move forward into middle school, you'll notice the change scores get a little broader. This was part of the reason that just adding change to status and dividing by 2 didn't work. Because you'll notice that the range of change scores vary greatly across each of the indicators. Moving forward to high school, you'll note that the change scores vary greatly. If you look at reading and math, English language learner progress, and graduation rate, school climate and safety, post-secondary readiness, those ranges vary from each of the indicators. Note that the increase in state assessment results in reading and math, if you increase up to 6 points, it's an increase significantly when you get to 6.3 or more. That tells us that an increase of 2, 3, 4, 5 points is a lot because when you get to 6.3, it's significant. Notice on the other side that your graduation rate, your increase goes to 2.9 and your significant increase is 3.0. So there's a lot of variability in the change scores within each indicator. Looking at our overall performance, the overall score is used to determine the color rating when we get to that overall performance. And I'll remind you again of the trainings that we released in a DAC Monday email the 1st of October with the specific training around each of the calculations. Let's look now at the reporting timeline. Public release is tentatively scheduled the last week of October. As of now, the district embargo will begin at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on October 30th. Media will get it the same day around noon. And at that point, districts, whether it's your district assessment coordinator, your superintendent, if you have a public relations staff member, can begin at that point talking with media and developing the stories for the local newspaper and media outlets. The embargo is planned to be lifted on October 31st at 9:59 p.m. So happy Halloween. We'll be all celebrating together and looking at the school report card to make sure that it's correct. Halloween night. The public release of school accountability data will be at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the 31st, which will then lead to the next opportunity to make individual student changes in SDRR once the public release of accountability results has been made. Now, this 10-day regulatory data review period is in statute, and it will last this year from November 1st through November 13th. We do realize that is more than 10 days, but since the 10 days falls over the weekend, we pushed back the date to November 13th to close SDRR. So SDRR will open at 9 a.m. Eastern Time on November 1st and will close at noon or 12 p.m. Eastern Time on November 13th for new tickets. Now, there'll be additional time for resolution of any new tickets. One additional note on the public release reporting timeline is that all of these dates hinge on the quality control day on October 17th. If there are big systematic errors found that cannot be resolved prior to October 30th, this timeline may shift. So think of these dates as tentative. Let's look at some preliminary data cautions and the embargo status. As I've noted, the quality control data is presented to district assessment coordinators for review and are considered preliminary. We're looking for systematic errors that could impact your accountability. So take preliminary cautions around sharing the data. It's appropriate for you to share school and district level staff this preliminary data, but you want to be very cautious about the fact that it's not final and could change. So that communication with your school and district staff need to happen, because if they think that, for example, they're a green school and something happens, there's an error that's found and it changes their accountability and they become an orange school, they may not be very happy with that. So as you decide the reports and what you share with your district and school leadership, be very cautious and really share in the fact that the data may change. Even though you don't identify an issue on quality control day, other district assessment coordinators are reviewing their data and they may find an issue in their data that impacts yours. So just because you don't find an issue on quality control day doesn't mean that another district assessment coordinator won't find something and it impact yours. So just have that knowledge, and as you share and communicate it, that it is preliminary and could change. And they're not considered final until after the public release. And you will get to see it during that embargo period that's currently tentatively scheduled for October 30th. So that data could be talked about privately, but not shared in any public meetings or shared by the media until they get access to it at noon on October 30th. So what data can be shared and when? Well, schools and districts have the individual student data now. Those scores were provided by the vendors all along the year. You've got access data, you've got ACT data, you've got kindergarten screen data. You received the Kentucky Summative Assessment and alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment during fall data review. Those are already in your hands, and I'm thinking that has been shared with school districts and teacher leaders to make those instructional decisions already. So the teachers should already have those individual student level data. School and district data that are preliminary, that may change, are provided on QC Day. Now, data should be shared at that point. That preliminary accountability data, we suggest sharing that with only school and district level leadership, who that you can communicate with and trust that they know that it's preliminary and that could possibly change until after public release. Now, anyone that you share the accountability data with will need a non-disclosure form, and we've linked it here for you on the slide. If you do share it with your district and school leadership, the district assessment coordinator would maintain those non-disclosure forms that you share it with. So as you share the data, provide the non-disclosure form, and you would maintain that non-disclosure form at the district level. Now, pre-release data, and that is during that October timeframe, that aggregate data can be shared during the embargo time. So when you get to the embargo date, again, tentatively scheduled for October 30th, at that point, then you can share the accountability data with your school and district staff. And again, they'll need to sign a non-disclosure if you share it with them prior to public release. And you would need to maintain that one at this district level also. Let's look at a few data details. The minimum N has been increased to 30 students per school level at elementary, middle, and high. Previously, in other accountability systems, it was at 10, but now the 10 continues to be reported at the school level in the school report card. Now, remember, our accountability system is a level system, which is elementary, middle, and high schools. So in Kentucky and across the nation, we follow the U.S. Department of Education's guidance and the FERPA laws, Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, their guidelines and best practices for reporting. With that, there will be some data that will not be made public, but will be in the spreadsheets shared with you on Quality Control Day. Now, let's look at a couple of examples of what will be suppressed in the school report card. The first example is if a performance level count is less than 3 or has no students. In this case, all the performance levels will be suppressed at that grade level. An example of this is we had a school that had a content area where all their students were distinguished. Now, that was something to celebrate. However, because they were 100% distinguished, that would let everyone know what the students scored on that particular content area test. And since that is protected, school or test data is protected, and individual test data can't be known by the public. Reporting that everyone in that school got distinguished would release the information about individual students. So that data unfortunately had to be suppressed. Another example is if the NAPD, which is Novice, Apprentice, Proficient, Distinguished count, is less than 10. This is when the student population is tested, but there are fewer than 10 students in the tested population. So that information would not be made public on the school report card, but it will be in the spreadsheets. And Helen's going to show you an example of where you can find the suppressed data. Because in the spreadsheets, the suppressed data will be in red font. That all the data will be available to schools and districts, but just not publicly available where the public can know and determine what the students' test scores were. Now, the alternative program and school trackback follows the 100-day rule. So all of our 100-day rule placements are still in place. So district placements in alternative programs will code to the district. So if they're in a district program for 100 days, then that would code to the district rather than the school. If there are district placements in alternative schools, it would code to the district rather than the school, unless the student was court ordered or a state agency placed the student there. And in that instance, the student scores would then be coded to the state, given that the student has no other A1 enrollment. Now, that doesn't exclude the students that are in Gatton, Craft, KSD, KSB, which they track to their A1 homeschool. There's a wonderful 100-day tool that assists when trying to determine where the student's accountability would ultimately fall. And KDE does look at placement practices when looking in Infinite Campus to see where the students have been to determine that 100-day accountability. Now, although participation rate does not impact accountability, we do have to report participation rate for federal purposes. So for the participation rate, it includes the students that are in the school, and the calculation is the number of students who attempted the test divided by the number of students enrolled. Now, for the participation rate purposes, first-year EL students are credited as attempting the reading, social studies, editing, mechanics, and writing assessments. The first-year EL students who do not attempt math and science will negatively impact the participation rate. So you want to make sure that you are having your EL students attempt those required assessments. The U.S. Department of Education, through the Every Student Succeeds Act, requires that all public schools, even those without tested grades, are included in accountability. So feeder schools, which we use for those schools that do not have tested grades, that they have students in either kindergarten, first or second grade, they feed to an elementary. So those feeder schools, they would receive then the same classification is the school that it feeds. So my example, the kindergarten first or second grade school, a school that has only those grades that feeds to an elementary school would receive that classification of the school that it feeds to. So for example, if the elementary school that let's say a K2 school fed to received a color rating of green, then the K2 school would receive the green rating as well. At this point, I want to turn and look to Helen Jones for some additional detail on those quality control spreadsheets. Helen?
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm Helen Jones, and I am the Academic Program Manager in the Office of Assessments and Accountability in the Division of Assessments and Accountability Support. I'm going to walk you through the data that you will have access to on QC Day, and then I will discuss some very important preparations for you for that particular day, and as well as talk you through some activities that you may want to ensure is completed prior to QC Day, as well as some contact information that you will be there to support you as you go through your data on QC Day. When you have access to the district and school data, you will notice there are several folders that will be listed. There is the accountability student data, and this is where you want to spend your time. Not saying that all the other data is not important, but this is where you want to begin the validation process. So there is the accountability, you have student data, you have calculator. These are all the folders that you will be able to see. You'll see English language proficiency rate, an enormous amount of data. What we've tried to do is to attempt to highlight the folders in the spreadsheets you should focus on for QC Day. So for QC Day, we want you to look at the accountability folder. Within that, you'll see spreadsheets that'll have NAPD or the novice, apprentice, and proficiency level, the quality control, the quality school climate and safety folder, the summary folder. And for QC Day, we're going to say this is where we want you to begin your work. And then you'll have the student data. This is also used to validate your data. In the student data, this is where you'll see that student level information. So you'll have graduates, the post-secondary readiness data, as well as the actual student level tests that your students took during the fall and the spring. Here, let's get into the data. The accountability folder, the accountability summary worksheet contains 8 worksheet tabs. So here you will find the worksheets for the aggregate summary data. For the profile, you'll see tabs for, and these are all the worksheets that will be housed in that accountability summary workbook. So you'll see a tab at the bottom of that workbook that'll have the profile, your TSI groups, if there are any, this is where you want to focus some time looking at that. You'll have scores and labels for each of your indicators. This is an opportunity for you to start looking at and seeing those indicators. So you'll have your state assessments results in reading and mathematics, state assessments results in science, social studies, and writing, English language progress, quality school climate and safety, post-secondary readiness, and graduation rate. So let's look into those spreadsheets. So again, the very first tab that you will see is this profile tab. Here you will see your overall score. You'll get the chance to see that very first time to take a look at that overall score. Now, within, I want to make note that as you start to get into those folders, you will have school and district level spreadsheets or worksheets. Now, they will look the same, but you'll notice that you'll have your district level data, and then you'll have your school level data. But they will have the same headings or the same column labels for each one of those spreadsheets. So on the profile tab, this is an opportunity, as I said, for you to see that overall score, as well as that rating, and then the indicator scores as well will be in this profile worksheet tab. The next tab in that accountability summary workbook will be that TSI. This is where you will see that TSI designation, if that is applicable for your schools. The information that will be provided for you here, you'll see that demographic group, as well as that federal classification, along with the year that the school was identified. Keep in mind, refer back to the overall accountability trainings to understand more about how those federal classifications and when the next set of federal classifications will be identified. But this information will be listed here for you. The next indicator that you will have access to is that reading and math, the state assessments results for reading and mathematics. This is where you will start to see the actual data and your overall, you will get your score, your indicator score, you will see your indicator ratings, you will see your status and your status levels, your change levels and rating, your change scores, your status score, your change levels, and your status levels will be here on this spreadsheet. The next slide is very similar to your indicator rating for the reading and mathematics. This is going to be, all of these are going to be very similar, so I won't spend a lot of time here. So the one note in this one, which is the state assessments results for science, social studies, and writing, the one note that I want to bring to your attention is the fact that this indicator score, you will get all the same, you'll get your indicator score, your rating and status and change, all of that will be listed here. But the writing component portion for this is the combined writing portion for the indicator. To actually see the breakdown between the editing and mechanic to get you that combined writing score, you will that will be provided in the student assessed NAPD worksheet. And we'll talk about that a little later. The next spread worksheet that you will see under that accountability summary workbook is the EL worksheet tab. Again, this contains all the indicator ratings, the indicator score, as well as the data listed in the previous slide. But in this one, it includes the data for the percentage of points from the EL growth table. And again, Jennifer has talked about that we've already provided you with previous training regarding the EL and how you get the calculation for this particular indicator. This will be this is the actual data that you'll see based on those particular calculations from that training. The next tab under that accountability summary is the quality of school climate and safety tab. This worksheet includes the indicator score for that perception. Remember, the students took a survey during their the very first portion of their KSA and AKSA state assessments. This is the survey results. So here is the indicator data for the survey, which measures the students' perception of their climate and safety as they experience it within their school. Now, the next two indicators, primarily, as you know, are just for our high schools. So for the post-secondary readiness worksheet tab, in addition to the indicator score rating and all of the other previous data that we've talked about previously, the change scores this includes the academic and the career readiness. There's data for the bonus that is applied. To understand how this bonus is applied, I'm going to refer you back again to the indicator trainings for the post-secondary readiness. It will walk you through all of that and how those bonus points are applied as well. But you can see that here. And we've kind of tried to highlight or at least capture the focus of where you can look to see those bonus points for that, as well as those other data points that will be interested to look at. The very last slide for the accountability summary workbook is that graduation tab. Now, this contains the indicator scores, all of that, but you'll also notice that we will still continue to provide that 4-year and 5-year cohort data for you as well. So now we're going to look at another folder that is going to be under that accountability folder. Within that, you have your NAPD, or your novice, apprentice, and proficient level. This is going to be really important for you to spend some time, because you want to make sure all of your students, and you want to look at those levels. This NAPD spreadsheet has the aggregate data for the performance of the 100-day students. So again, Jennifer talked about and reminded you that the 100-day rule still applies for accountability. So you will see this will be reported for the demographic groups for the schools and the district at all the assessed levels. That's your elementary, middle, and your high school. This is one of the spreadsheets where you will start to see that suppressed data. And Jennifer gave some wonderful examples of data that could possibly be suppressed. Keep in mind, as she stated, that the suppressed data, that will not be reported publicly. However, this is something that will be beneficial for internal review. And you want to discuss this with your schools and district, this suppressed data. So this is one of the spreadsheets that will have that suppressed data. As you'll notice, the other ones that we've gone through did not have any suppressed data. So this is one of the spreadsheets that you will see suppressed data. We'll have a few more for you to take a look at as well. Underneath that accountability folder is the quality of school climate and safety. Now, in the profile sheet, you basically just got your aggregate data. This spreadsheet contains how the student or the student's responses on those individual items on the quality of school climate and safety. So you'll see the questions and the participants in the tests and the ones that were tested. You'll see this information and how the students responded for those individual items on the survey itself. So let's get into, we're going to transition now from that accountability folder into that student data. So this is where we start getting into that really specific information about those students that actually participated for the reporting piece. The first one that we're going to look at, your graduates. So you have your graduation. These are the students in that graduation piece. We're looking at the spreadsheet that will include your 4 and 5 year adjusted cohort, as well as other information. Your gender and race will be listed here, as well as your students that were your IEP students or free and reduced lunch students. Here, you want to pay attention to make sure that, I want to make note of this, is that you want to ensure that all of your students are listed here as well. So you want to pay close attention to make sure that the students are properly identified and coded correctly. Another very important is your post-secondary readiness. So under this spreadsheet, within this spreadsheet, student level data regarding the academic, again, and the career readiness, as well as all of your bonus for earning those high demand industry certifications, as well as scores for AP and other academic data will be here in your post-secondary readiness. You've already received your ACT data, but it will be listed here as well. So this is a good reference for you to just make sure that all of your students are listed. The next folder that we're going to look at is that student data. So this is where we have those tests and all of your student listings. So this is that data that, and we talked about the importance of security when we start looking at that and who should have access. But this is also where you want to make sure all of your students are listed or identified. This particular workbook has several, so you have a student listing, that's going to be the big workbook that's going to have everything. And then it will be broken down into the content assessments as well as access. So you'll have those 2 tabs at the bottom. So we're calling those worksheet tabs at the bottom. So you'll see content and then the students that took the access assess within this folder. So you're going to have all of your tests will be listed here. And what I've done here, we've got examples of all of these. So slides 44 through 46, I won't walk you through each one of them, but you'll be able to see these details on that. But what you will notice with these slides are the individual student level data for each content area that was assessed. So in grades 3, you will have all your math and reading assessments. And then in grade 5, you will have all of the contents that were tested as well will be listed here. This worksheet has data also for any allegations which may not have been processed, or they may have been processed, which means that the data could change. And again, this is all your preliminary data. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to those types of pieces too. So if there was an allegation that took place at any point during the assessments in the spring, or then this could impact your overall score. This is also this spreadsheet will have the non-participation data that's included, as well as DAX will have the opportunity to see that editing and mechanics and on-demand writing results for their students. Jennifer mentioned that this is preliminary data. And as I said, it's still subject to, we find systemic issues that could impact your score, or that could impact changes that could take place. If there's an allegation, that could also, and if that allegation has not been resolved, that could also be impact your score. So pay attention to this. So again, this is the test, and it will have all of your tests, and you'll see that as I go through this. So again, this is where you see the editing and mechanic broke down here. And this is still all under that those tests, or the content assessed here. I want to bring you to the, I want to show you where you can look to see if there is an allegation score that may have impacted your data, that could have caused a change. So that's what this particular slide does. It just basically brings attention to, this will be found if there was an allegation that impacted your score. It will be here and identified here in column G. Now, still in that student data folder under that workbook for a test, you are going to have your access information. This includes the data for all the students who took access. The domains are recorded, the composite score, prior year, and growth value, as well as if an allegation which resulted in a score being changed will be included in this particular worksheet as well. So those are the spreadsheets that we've asked you to really focus on. Now, if you have time, again, there's a lot of information here, and we understand that. And if you have the opportunity to actually spend some time reviewing, but this is what we want to, this will help us with the accountability validation. So, but as you get through that, then now what? Okay, now that you have access to the data, how do you begin? I mean, what are some of the things that you need to do? There is a calculator that we calculate, the accountability calculator that we will be providing for you. This tool provides the schools and districts the opportunity to actually calculate or use an estimation on their performance using different data point scenario. We will be providing that for you. So this is a resource that we will include for you to use during QC Day. Next, let's look at some materials that you will need. Okay, so how do we begin? First, ensure that you've reviewed all of the accountability overview training. If you have not had a chance to do that, that is going to be so important, because this will walk you through how those calculations and how we got the data that's included in those spreadsheets. Understanding the minimum N, that's another very important tool or training that you need to really understand how we include it, what students are included into the accountability system, and which students are reported. So go back and review those trainings for the minimum N, as well as then the other thing that must be done is your QC Day non-disclosure. This document has to be completed and submitted using the Google form. You will not be allowed access to your data until we receive that. Also, we're going to suggest that you have at least on hand access for the information from SDRR. Because if you submitted any student listing or change listing, that's going to be there. You're going to need to have your cohort data. This is just another reference point for you to just verify and validate the data that you are reviewing is accurate. Your post-secondary readiness score is also going to be important because, again, this is all about ensuring that we're not missing any main data or identifying those systemic issues prior to re-release data. You also, another great tool is just to go in there and look at the KDE, that secure web app, and look at those student details. So all of this was a good way to ensure that you're ready for QC Day. Tasks to be completed on QC Day. As you're going through your data, you want to utilize this data discrepancy report. And that's going to be critical. If you identify any systemic issue, it's going to be imperative that you submit that immediately, because at that point, that lets us know that there is a problem that needs to be addressed. Now, as you go through and you've gone through and you've reviewed all your data, everything looks good, we're going to ask that you then complete the QC checklist. So go through and you're going to, and then once that's submitted, that signals OAA and KDE that you've actually completed your review of your data. That lets us know also that you did, either you did or you did not find any systemic issue. Both forms are going to be password protected, and you'll have access to that on the morning of QC Day. Let's talk about how to communicate on that day. We're going to be there for you. It's a lot of information, it's a lot of data, but you're not going to be alone. We're going to be there for you. So on QC Day, someone from OAA will reach out to you, letting you know who they are. You need to communicate by, if you find a problem, as I stated before, on QC Day, please complete that data discrepancy report and submit it as soon as possible. You submit this to KDE at this email address, kdeassessments@education.ky.gov. If you submit that, if you find a discrepancy or some systematic issue, we're going to ask you to be patient with this, because it's going to take us some time to do the research as well. But we will get back to you, and you will hear from us on based on what your submissions are. And I mentioned a few of these, but here's a checklist of some of the information that you should have with you as you're preparing or as you're working through the QC Day. So you want the summary files and spreadsheets organized in folders under student data details. Okay, this is on your KDE web app. Online quality control checklist. You need your data discrepancy report, as well as those SDRR information and for the SDRR to prepare, to just assist with you being ready on that day, that can be downloaded prior to. Some you will not have access to until the day of QC Day. That morning you will have access to that, and that will be, again, submitting your non-disclosure to us, and then you'll start getting access to your files. So on the day of QC Day, OAA will be available to assist you that entire day, from that time period, from the moment that is open until you've completed your, we will have staff available for you. They will reach out to each one of you and just let you know that they are your contact. The best way to contact us will be, I will say either email or team. We have the phone numbers listed as well, but here's the problem with the phone number. If a staff is tied up and you need to talk to someone real quickly and they're already on the phone, it may take some time for them to get back to you. But if you shoot them an email or send them a Teams message, they'll see it and they'll get back to you as soon as they're available. So here's hoping that you have a successful quality control day. We're hoping that we don't find any systemic issues. And if you need us, just know that we're going to be available for you. You have the support of the Office of Assessments and Accountability, as well as the entire Kentucky Department of Education. We just want to also say we thank you and we appreciate all of the hard work that you've done. And good luck. Thank you.